Tell me to drop the class if I don't like your rules. Okay, then you'll lose 5 students and your job. This happened years ago, but a post on here reminded me of it. So when I was a freshman in college, I registered for a basic AS English 102 course that doubled as a humanities credit. I thought, great, 2 birds 1 stone, despite the rate my professor for this class being abysmal at best. A few things to note. I have ADHD and dyslexia, so I have a hard time reading most times, but especially handwritten stuff. Even my own. It's also important to note that I had an ADA allowance on file, meaning I get some permissions to allow me to take classes and function as normally as possible. These permissions included use of my tablet during class to write notes and about an hour longer on tests. Well, first day of class, the professor strolls in with the arrogance and snobitude of someone who thinks they're getting tenured this year. He starts talking, going over the syllabus, and says there will be no phones, laptops or technology of any kind in my class. You will write all your notes by hand, which isn't going to work for me. So I raise my hand and ask him if I can talk to him privately about the rule. That went over about as well as a lead balloon, and he starts getting snippy and says anything you need to talk with me about can be found in the syllabus. But again, I said that I needed to talk to him and that it was pretty important. Finally, he just says to say it to the class. He doesn't have time to take out to deal with whining of any kind. Like, okay dude. So, I say that I'm dyslexic and need my tablet to do the notes and read the assignments, and that my ADA permissions are on file and emailed to all my professors before class. He says, yeah, I saw the email, but I don't care. You can do the work just like everyone else. You're not special even if you were in special ed. The class goes deadly quiet at that. I'm absolutely shocked at his bold and completely hilarious lack of awareness and care for his job. I'm staring at him open-mouthed and he thinks he's one. He's got this smug little face like I've just been told and there are no other options, nor is there any way he'll regret his behavior. One of the girls in class finally finds her voice and calls Hun out in his ableism and lack of decorum, but he cuts her off saying, if you don't like my rules, you can drop the class. So she says okay and pulled out her laptop and dropped the class right in front of him, and taking the cue from her 3 other students, and I do the same and we leave class together. At the same time, I've never met this girl before, but she then asks me if I want to go to the dean because honestly, I'm really shaken. So I said yes and we go straight there, telling the dean of students what happened as well as the ADA counselor. They took the girl's statement and mine, and discovered that this professor had pulled this shit for years but nobody wanted to get involved. 6 months later I hear that not only had the professor not gotten tenured, but he was fired and blacklisted from teaching at the collegiate level. Now to the comments. He can be sued for not allowing accommodations for disabilities. And should be. As can the university for not addressing this before. Which is probably the reason he was fired. The university would have been open to a lawsuit if they didn't do something serious about it. That girl is an advocate. We need more of her. Kudos. Kudos to that girl that immediately dropped. I would have too. I also use my tablet to take notes, same deal. I've had professors try it, it doesn't go well for them since my notes basically look like textbook pages. What you gonna do? Complain I take great notes when I can accommodate my disabilities? Having been a lecturer, I can't imagine caring what was on someone's tablet. Unless you're distracting other students, or I have a participation grade for a particular activity, I don't care if you pay thousands in tuition to show up to my class to mess around on a tablet. Policing adults who don't care about the class is not where I want to put my effort anyway. And broke federal laws by forcing a discussion of ADA permissions in front of other students. I had a college professor do this. It was the first day of class and we were going through the syllabus. The university requires professors to include a statement on SDS/ADA, and he asks the 100+ person lecture hall, Does anyone in here have a disability? Do we need to go through this section of the syllabus? No? Good. Horrifying. Literally, what the duck is wrong with people? Good for that girl. And good for you for going with her to complain. I had one professor in college who didn't allow technology, and that was weird AF. I've had a few teachers refuse tech in class. The ones I remember, all women, giving a reason for it had too many people watching porn and masturbating in the back of class to feel comfortable letting people have laptops anymore. What does he have against using technology for note-taking? Shocking that this would happen at a university. I went to public school in a small town in the 1990s or early 2000s, and I had teachers make me rewrite my homework by hand if I handed it in typed. I always assumed it was because not a lot of people in the town had computers at the time, and since it was something they weren't capable of doing themselves, they were jealous. A couple studies came out saying that people retain info better when they handwrite their notes, and technophobic professors have been using that as an excuse to ban laptops ever since. I never understood this reasoning, considering my notes were always way more detailed when I typed. When I read them later on, they had more context and it was easier to remember. For me, I suppose if I wanted less detailed notes and never went back to review, handwritten notes would be the way to go. Side story, one of my college profs once asked for a copy of my notes from his semester's worth of lectures. I was like an unpaid court reporter apparently. When my mom was in college, late 70s or early 80s, she had to get special permission to record lectures because she wasn't able to handwrite due to her hands being deformed. Some professors pushed back even after seeing that she was physically unable to write. She would type her notes at home after class, and some thought that was unfair that she'd have extra time to do the work. Meanwhile, at home was a husband and 3 kids. I'm sure she would much rather have had functioning fingers than having to sit in the lecture 2 times. I'm really glad they took your needs seriously, OP, and that someone stood up for you as well. One of my sociology professors told me that anxiety wasn't real and it was just girls overreacting. In front of the entire class, another girl stood up and basically yelled at him. I'd never met her, but she was instantly my hero. From then on, we kept notes about the class and got most of the class to fill out the professor review survey thing with notes that included dates and times. I didn't see him after that semester was over, and a new professor joined the department. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Edmund Burke. I have ADHD and dyslexia. And yet you persevered. Duck, yeah bro. You deserve a cookie. Good. Duck that guy. Good for you. My university I work for has a very strict policy for students with disabilities. They get extra time, assistance and leeway in class. Have their own center for needed materials, wheelchairs, volunteers to help them study or translate books into Braille. Not only are the students with disability listed on our professor intranet pages for each class, the university heavily enforces and reminds us what is required if we have any student with any disability in any of our classes. I go out of my way to help students with disabilities as I understand the frustrations, fears and doubts that go through their minds. I am lucky enough to have an aunt who worked with special ed when I was in elementary school. Her classroom was next to my classroom. I would go in after classes finished for the day, and she taught me so much about the difficulties of being disabled and trying to learn in a public school setting. I kept that at heart and worked in the psych rehab department for several years helping students. When the elevator in my building was down for repairs, my student texted me to say he can't make it to class. I told him that we would make sure he was in class. Please meet me on the first floor. I took 3 guys with me and we carried him up 3 flights of stairs so he could be in class. 2 extra students to make room in front of us and 1 student behind us, just in case we got off balance. In my writing class, I converted all my tests to an oral exam for my student who was quadriplegic. Yes, he took physical therapy for years and now can walk on his own. He was able to walk for his graduation. It was awesome to see him do this. You need a movie about your career. Dang.